We are going live.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to David T. Howard's Go Team meeting, where we will follow the agenda that has been emailed to you and publicly noticed. I would like to remind everyone that this is a meeting of the Go Team. Only members of the team may participate in the discussion. Any members of the public present are here to quietly observe. For the members of the Go Team, please identify yourself when you speak. I am pleased to call this meeting of the David T. Howard Go Team to order at 4:45 p.m. Our first order of business is to call the roll. Ms. Baker, please call the roll for us, please.
I shall. Ms. Antone?
Here.
Mr. Abernathy?
Present.
Myself, I am present, Wendy Baker. Dr. Bryant? I see a phone number. I don't know who the phone number is.
I know she had trouble earlier accessing, so that may or may not be her.
Okay. They're not taking herself off mute, so I don't know. I'm just going to write absent, and then if she speaks, we'll know. Mr. Webb?
Present.
All right. Ms. Reese?
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Keenan?
Here.
Ms. Walker? And we still have a vacant community member seat. Is that correct? Okay. And then Ms. Sheets.
Here.
Thank you very much, everyone.
I was trying to text Dr. Bryant to see if she's able to hear us. That is her phone number. So that is her. So I'm not sure if she's able to hear us.
I'll type something in the chat.
Okay.
I appear to not be getting a response back.
So Ms. Baker, we do have Dr. Bryant on the phone.
Okay, thank you. I will mark her present.
Coach, do you know how to unmute on a phone? I mean, it's something in Zoom that you're supposed to do.
Well,
We got you, Dr. Bryant, but you are not coming off of mute on the actual Zoom itself.
but we can
I
hear
was
you.
just wondering, how do we go about doing that?
We got you. I'll have you on here on mine, okay?
Okay, all right. I'm sorry, guys.
Glad you're here, Dr. Bryant. All right.
All right. Ms. Baker, do we have a quorum?
We do indeed, sir.
All right. Next order of business is to approve the agenda. Let me know when I have a motion to approve.
This is Wendy Baker. I make a motion to approve the agenda.
This is Jennifer, a second.
All right, that's Baker. In the motion, Ms. Keenan, second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, next is for the approval of the previous minutes from January 25th. Let me know when I have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve, Joyce Sheets.
All right, Ms. Sheets made a motion and I have a second.
Audrey Reese, I second.
Ms. Reese, a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. So we will now move on to discussion item draft budget. Go team feedback session.
All right, thank you, Coach Abernathy. Do I have rights to share my screen?
Mr. Perry has host rights.
Let's see. Okay, it's disabled, so I just need him to give me rights.
You're all set.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Okay, all right. Thank you. Once again, we will go into looking at the second part of our budget presentation. As you can recall, in our last meeting, we actually reviewed our budget allocations. And so as we move forward, we pretty much, as we shared this presentation, we have all of our school priorities listed. And then I'm just going to go on to slide 21 that reviews the description of the strategic plan breakout categories. And so what it consists of are our priorities from our strategic plan, the APS 5 focus areas. So we have to list exactly which APS 5 focus area it is aligned to in terms of our priority, the strategies that are a part of our strategic plan as it relates to that priority, and then the ask, what needs to be funded in order to support that strategy. And then, of course, the amount, what costs are associated with that request. And that's pretty much what the format is like. But before we get started, just want to recognize that everything that we are discussing is based on the priorities set forth by the GO team. And in sixth grade, we're looking at 16 teachers with approximately 356 students. That lands us at about 23 students per class. In seventh grade, 15 teachers with 353 students, approximately 24 students per class. And then eighth grade, 16 students with approximately, 16 teachers at 409. That's the projected enrollment with approximately 26 students per class. And so as we get into looking at the strategic plan breakout, we look at the priority, develop safe, positive, and informed and engaged school culture. It's aligned with our whole child and interventions. We wanted to make sure that we had a counselor per grade, that every grade level had a counselor. And so we wanted to make sure that we would use our CARES rollover funds for FY22 to make sure that we brought on a counselor to make sure that we do replace that sixth grade counselor. Also with creating an environment that motivates and retains staff members, that falls under curriculum and instruction. And we would, in terms of trying to work with teachers and support our teachers, make sure we hire 2 instructional coaches using our CARES rollover FY22 funds and also our CARES FY23 funds. In terms of the amount, they are $109,000, $1,429,000 a piece, which puts us at $218,858. In terms of providing the necessary supports and resources to enhance learning and teaching and learning, that also falls under curriculum instruction. When we look at the request, that also falls back on the hiring of those instructional coaches. So it still supports that priority as well. And also making sure that we can hire at least 2 paraprofessionals with the FY23 leveling reserve funding. And also making sure that we hire a full-time Spanish teacher with our FY23 budget. In terms of the amount associated, we already gave the amount for the instructional coaches up top, which is the $218,858,000. And so $43,699,000 would be the cost of hiring a paraprofessional, and with 2 of them would be $87,398,000 for a full-time Spanish teacher. The cost is $93,780,000. In terms of increasing the diversity of families who engage with the school through various activities, that definitely falls under whole child and interventions. We do want to make sure that we continue to hire an hourly parent liaison with our FY23 CARES funds. And having our counselors also supports that process. And we want to make sure that we do have a counselor at each grade level, which continues to support that priority as well. But $15,000 would be the cost to hire an hourly parent liaison. Soliciting parent feedback on support needed to help our students be successful also falls on the whole child interventions. Once again, having that parent liaison helps to support that, as well as our counselor, making sure that we have a counselor at every grade level. In terms of the next priority, build teacher capacity and leadership opportunities across professional learning communities to meet the diverse and social academic needs of students. That falls under curriculum and instruction and signature programming. And in terms of, I pretty much listed the strategies there from our strategic plan, 5-year strategic plan. And part of it was strengthening teacher skills through regular coaching and feedback, and building teacher capacity, with leadership opportunities and things of that nature. And so having the instructional coaches in terms of 1 ELA, 1 math further actually supports that particular priority and strategy, as well as making sure that we have leadership opportunity. We would definitely have to hire a signature program specialist. And the cost of that program, signature program specialist, is $106,578,000.
Miss Antone, is it possible to make it a bit bigger?
Yes, thank you.
Thank
Sorry
you.
about that.
No, it's fine. Thank you.
Okay, all right. I think that's much.
Yes.
Okay. All right, yes. And so every school in our cluster must have that signature program specialist. So that is a requirement that will be new for us next year. Also, ensuring students receive interventions and supports to demonstrate mastery on essential standards. That does fall on the whole child interventions. And our strategy we had on the plan was implement weekly collaborative team meetings to set proficiency levels for student learning and collectively study essential standards and learning targets. As we want to make sure that our interventions are in place, and we want to also look at hiring a restorative practice coach who will also conduct MTSS and 504s using the CARES funds. And the cost of that position would be $109,429,000. Also utilize data to drive instructional practices for our struggling learners and gifted and advanced students. And that falls under data utilization when it comes to APS 5. And all of the strategies that we had there support the need for the ELA and math instructional coach, as they would guide those processes that you see under strategies in terms of using student achievement data to make sure that it guides the instructional planning and processes. Also, the restorative practice coach further supports that priority and those strategies in terms of making sure those interventions are carried out using that data, as well as making sure that we have a counselor for every grade level. Okay. Also, we have utilized academic and behavioral universal screeners to address the whole child. That falls on the whole child interventions. It also falls on the data utilization and personalized learning. And so under the strategies, we talked about utilizing the care team and the intervention block to ensure students with intensive needs are consistently addressed. Part of making sure that our student needs are addressed is making sure we have a counselor at every grade level. And so we do want to make sure that we have 3 counselors to support our students One of the things that our counselors have to do, which is it does take up a lot of their time after the BASS mental health behavior screener. When we look at those students who have the need for high intervention, they have to actually go through and chat with each one of those students. And you're talking about anywhere from 100 students or more that they have to go through and conference with individually, and then reach out to parents and help to find those supports. So we definitely need all 3 counselors. In terms of providing the necessary supports and resources to enhance teaching and learning, that was also a priority, and it fell under curriculum and instruction. Our strategy was actually to hire paraprofessionals to assist with reducing the non-instructional duties for teachers. And so the request is to hire 2 paraprofessionals with our FY23 leveling reserve funding. And that would put us at $398,000. And our leveling fund was right at $137,000. Also provide the necessary supports and resources to enhance teaching and learning. That also fell under curriculum and instruction, also whole child interventions and personalized learning. And the request is to basically use those funds for non-staffing items. Some of those non-staffing items, and there are quite a few, fall under things like postage, teaching supplies, incentives, media supplies, computer equipment, and software. And so that amount is $49,602,000. So we are not a Title I school, so we skipped that slide. And so I know we talked about the CARES FY23 funds allocation, but under that budget, we have priority number 7, which was create an environment that motivates and retains staff, which falls in the curriculum and instruction. In terms of strategies, we had ongoing professional learning for new teachers to strengthen skills and increase the number of teachers with gifted certification. And so with those funds, we would look at hiring a math instructional coach at the cost of $429,000. And then ensuring students receive interventions and support to demonstrate mastery on essential standards. We were trying to make sure that we hire a restorative practice coach who could do restorative practice conferences with students, as well as conduct the MTSS RTI 504s for our building. And that cost us $109,429,000. And last, we have increased the diversity of families who engage with the school through various activities, which falls on the whole child interventions. And part of the strategies were to create outreach opportunities to reach our families and expanding our parent university. And so we do want to make sure that we continue to hire our hourly parent liaison with our FY23 CARES funds. And that amount was $15,000. In terms of the options that we looked at, excuse me, following based on our Go Team priorities, we would be removing the connections math positions, the 3D positions. That we currently have a part-time ESOL, part-time Spanish teacher. However, this would be removed because we actually earned 2 ESOL positions in our budget this year. So we would actually have to hire another full-time ESOL teacher. So that would be removed. SEL coach, one of our counselors were actually hired as an SEL coach. And so we would remove that to make sure that we actually add the official counselor position for next year with our CARES FY22 funds. We would have to remove 1 clerical staff. The part-time media paraprofessional would go away because all of our schools are required to have a full-time certified media specialist next year. And also our non-instructional para from CARES FY22 and FY23 funds. In terms of adding, we would make sure, and I think I explained the counselor position, we want to make sure we have 3 counselors, 1 per grade level, especially with making sure that we are supporting our students with whole child interventions, making sure that we are equipped to make sure that we can take on those universal screeners, and just making sure that, you know, student staff wellness, that we have our counselors in place, 1 per grade level. The instructional coach ELA, as well as the instructional coach math, we will be adding based on our school priorities, and the restorative practice coach that we spoke of as well. The signature program specialist, like I said, is mandatory. We have to have that next year for our upcoming signature program that will be selected. And also, we were able to make sure we have a another full-time Spanish teacher position. And like I said, we actually earned this year, we earned 1.5 ESOL teachers, but next year we actually earned 2 for FY23. So we would have to hire an ESOL teacher. And then also, as I mentioned before, the full-time certified media specialist is mandatory. So we won't be able to do the media para anymore, but we will have to bring on that full-time certified media specialist. So in summary, when we look at our core teachers, we have that would be 47. Our connections would be at 16, removing 1 of those classes. Paraprofessional, we have 9. In terms of leadership, it's 4. There will be a principal, 1 business manager, and 3 assistant principals. In terms of counselors, there will be 1 per grade to make sure they are able to focus on student wellness. Instructional coaches would be 2, 1 ELA, 1 math, and then there would be that signature program specialist. Looking at our budget and what we had to work with, the CARES Fund really helped to do what we needed to focus on and go back to those school priorities from the GO team and strategic plan. But if you look at the pie that we have here, you'll notice that we worked so that we did not have to abolish many teacher positions. And so if you look at this particular pie and look at the pie from our previous meeting, you'll see that if I'm not mistaken, we still have 84% when it comes to instruction. And 3% you see there at maintenance and operations, 8% school administration, that 1% educational media services, because we do have to make sure we have that full-time media specialist and make sure we put funds in non-staffing for media supplies. And then you have pupil services there at 4%. And so that is where we are in terms of the budget. And I will turn it over for questions to our go-to.
Ms. Antone, can you go back? I think it's 3 slides. Maybe 1 more slide. 1 more. Okay, so at the top, no, now down 1 more. Next one. Shoot. Well,
Okay.
here's my question. There we go. Yes.
Okay.
So we're hiring 2 paraprofessionals.
And that would be non-instructional paras. Yeah.
So is that in addition to the paraprofessionals we have now? Or
Yeah.
how is the total number of paraprofessionals changing?
Gotcha. All right. So right now we have 9. Right now we do have 9 instructional paras. Okay, and those are our special ed paras. And so for next year, what we're looking at is trying to bring on 2 additional. So I guess we could, instead of 9, we would, say altogether 11, but hire 2 non-instructional paras to kind of reduce some of the duties for our teachers.
Miss,
That's excellent. I'm thrilled to hear that. That's one of the things that we, emphasized, trying to lessen the administrative, I guess, the non-teaching duties of
Right.
theirs.
Yeah, like they, would handle things like cafeteria, things of that nature. So really, in essence, we earned those 9 paraprofessional positions, but these would be two additional non-instructional paras there. That are not,
I have a question.
yeah.
We already have 3 counselors. So are you saying that we're going to hire 3 more counselors to help the counselors, or is it the same 3 counselors?
That was that's a summary of how
Okay.
we have total. We
Okay.
currently have 2 counselors in the building, and we want to make sure that we hire 1 additional so that we have 1 counselor per grade level.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you go up a slide? I'm sorry. Yeah, this one. The next one. So can you talk about the connections math position? Was that a teacher? Was that one teacher who was full-time connections math?
Yes. And with this position, I do believe, yes, it is 1 full-time connections math teacher. Yes.
And what will the plan be for the kids who are in connections math and who are?
Yeah, good question. So one of the, this is never a fun activity to figure out what you have to remove from a building, but the rationale behind removing that position is the fact that we do have the intervention block 4 days a week, and we have MTSS that's going on inside of the classrooms every day. And when I say MTSS, for those who may not understand the process for which we have to make sure that kids who have tier 2 plans or tier 3 plans who are in the RTI process, they are receiving interventions inside of their classrooms that has to be progress monitored on a weekly basis. It's a formal process that they go through to make sure that that is monitored. There's monthly meetings on those tier 2 students, and there should be 4 meetings per year on the tier students who are in tier 3. So that's taking place inside of the classrooms for the struggling learners. And we now, have the mandated intervention block 4 days a week for those students. And so when we're looking at having to remove a position, not a teacher, but a position, we had to think through, okay, removing, since we have supports in place, we, could withstand removing this position, more so than, okay, let's go to 7th grade or 6th grade and remove a core teacher position. So this just made more sense since we do have at least 2 additional areas of support for our struggling students.
So in looking at the summary, what will be helpful, I think, for next year is to see how these numbers compare. So under summary 47 core teachers, how many core teachers do we have this year?
Okay, so we have 48. And so there's someone that's leaving, so we didn't have to remove we didn't have to remove anyone. In connections, we're removing that 1 connections class. With these paraprofessionals, it's the same. We will just be adding next year, so really it will be 11 once you add those in. Paraprofessionals next year. Leadership, that is the same. Counselors would be the same. You would have 3 counselors, which is 1 per grade level. And part of what may have been confusing for you is that one of the counselors were listed as SEL coach, which we're trying to remove that and bring on the official title of counselor, 1 per grade level. And of course, we do not have instructional coaches at this time, so this would be new. And we do not have a signature program specialist. And so this would be a new position.
Ms. Jacoby, I'm not clear still on the signature program specialist. I've been a part of the discussions with the cluster advisory team. And it seemed like the new signature program is going to take a while to be phased in. But will each school be required to have a signature program specialist for next year? Because the signature program isn't going to be up and running next year.
Yes, they will. It is my understanding that all schools in the district will have a signature program specialist for whatever their signature program is. And I believe, though, that the Midtown
Midtown is in the process of exploring, picking their signature program. And so whoever that person is, their responsibility will be to make sure that provide for professional development, go visit other sites. They will be actually building the program all next year. So that's why it's a full-time position. And then I think another thing is Ms. Antoine kind of mentioned with a connection, we wanted to make sure that we gave all kids an opportunity to explore the different connections that are offered at Howard instead of limiting them. Because even the kids that may struggle academically, they also have a right to participate in all the other connections. We want to make sure we gave them that opportunity.
Will the signature program specialist provide support to teachers as well? Will
Yes.
part of their role will be training teachers and giving teachers the resources that they need to get up to speed on the new signature program.
Yes.
Okay, that's
So
great.
they could do like go and model in the classroom. They could actually schedule them for professional development. They could take a group to visit other schools. They will be doing all of that, and they will be working with teachers as well. So it's sort of like an instructional coach around the signature program once we decide which program we're going to as a cluster.
I'll just say I'm thrilled to see that we're providing so much more support to teachers. You know, as I said a few minutes ago, that was one of the key goals that we identified. So between 2 paraprofessionals, 2 instructional coaches, and the program specialist, you know, that seems like a lot more resources to help teachers. I'd be curious to hear from the teachers on the Go team, what your thoughts are about how this reflects that priority that we put on to support teachers.
And just to mention also is that we have a long waiting list for Spanish every year. We may have 50 people, you know, kids on that waiting list. So in Spanish. And so we, you know, did want to make sure we recognize that since we earned that full-time ESOL teacher, we could no longer do that part-time Spanish, but we have to have another Spanish teacher because we still have some students who have that requirement to finish their 2-year Spanish program right now next year. But yes, and so any instructional staff on the meeting, if you want to chime in to kind of give us your thoughts.
Well, I've been in kind of a unique perspective because when I first came to Inman, we did have, we had an instructional coach and she assisted both for math and for language arts. And then the decision was made to not have instructional coaches anymore, which I thought was strange. I was the curriculum chair for a while and I would go to those meetings and mainly they were all instructional coaches. So they were always like, you're a classroom teacher, what are you doing here? And I'm like, well, I'm the curriculum chair. And so it puts us in it puts our school in an awkward place when we go to these trainings and we're basically sitting in a room full of instructional coaches and assistant principals. And that's not who we are. And so it'll be nice to actually have somebody who takes that on and then comes out because, you know, we haven't had anyone who had that actual official nomenclature.
And I would like to say, if y'all, can you all hear me? I know
Yes, ma'am.
okay, great. looking at the instructional coach positions, I think it's a very, very good idea because we need some strong people to go in from an instructional perspective, helping new teachers coming in with great ideas and things of this nature in order to increase test scores in both of those areas. Like I said, we've had instructional coaches before. Some of them, in one case, we had one that did all four core subjects. But I think this is a smart move on the school's part in order to increase proficiency in those two areas, math and language arts. So, bravo.
Thank you. So I will turn it over to Coach Abernathy to go over the questions for Go Team to consider.
I had one question about if you could show the slide that shows the number of students per class per grade. Yes, this one. I guess I'm curious why 8th grade doesn't have another teacher. You know, and given those numbers, that 8th grade has 53 more students, but doesn't have an additional teacher. So I don't know if there are opportunities to look at the budget more or what the thought process was on that. But to me, that's a pretty big jump. And I mean, all years are important, but 8th grade, getting the kids ready for high school. I would like to see if there's a way to get the students per class number down for 8th grade.
Gotcha. That's something we can look at. Right now, our classes are anywhere between 25, 28, 29 students. The cap, I do believe, is 32. So it's still at a, pretty good ratio, per student to teacher. But, that's something we can look at. Looking at that, we would have to remove, we would definitely have to make changes when we go back and look at that summary here in terms of what we would be willing to
sacrifice,
switch out there. All right. So, Coach Abernathy, I'm going to let you have it, as I do believe the Go Team chair is to go through the questions for the Go Team to consider.
All right, thank you, Ms. Antone. Number one, at the top are our school's priorities from our strategic plan reflected in this budget. Our new positions and our resources included in the budget to address our major priorities. Do we know as a team the plan to support implementation of these priorities beyond the budget? What trade-offs are being made in order to support these priorities? So are we going dot by dot to address each one? Are we talking in a whole sense? I'm not sure the actual process for this portion of the budget.
Well, we haven't seen a budget. That's what's kind of difficult about this process. I mentioned in an email right before our meeting, I remember going through Dr. Maxwell and it basically listed, I think it was maybe by department. So he had, whatever, 8 ELA teachers, 8 math teachers, 3 Spanish teachers, 1 French teacher, whatever. And then we saw what all of those positions added up to. we haven't seen that. We don't know. We don't have a budget. We haven't seen a budget. We've seen, the additional positions to be funded with the CARES money. And we saw the other slide about things being removed, but I don't think we've seen a budget yet.
Yeah, so we shared with you in the last meeting, the budget. You had the budget, and it's actually on the presentation that I shared with you that you have in your possession. And we copied and paste the items from the budget to share with you in terms of the allocations and what we have.
Wait, but haven't those changed? I thought I guess if you could go back, we had a big deficit. My understanding was we went through the allocations last meeting. We were shown what the budget would be if we kept all of the same positions. And now we've gone and modified the positions, but we don't know what the new budget is to reflect all those modifications.
So when you say the new budget, we're still operating from the same budget. What we had to do was make sure that we got the $584,000 down to a zero balance. That was how much we were over in terms of the actual budget. And so we have used a lot of the CARES funds to try to accommodate a lot of the ask in terms of the Go Team priorities, which is outside of that actual budget, but we were able to get that $584,000 down to a zero balance based on, let me go back, based on what we have removed, we were able to get that budget down to zero.
So can you go back to the budget then? That budget though that we saw last time is out of date because things have been added and things have been removed.
Mr. Kobe, Ms. Keenan, Mr. Kobe has a hand raised. So let us give a little bit of input so we can at least know what direction that we're going in with this.
So Ms. Keenan, I would just like to help understand, when you say the budget, are you talking about the allocation where you talked about the SSF and how many funds the school is getting? Because you keep saying, can you go back to the budget?
There's a slide after that. If you go up, keep going.
All right, we're going back to the previous presentation.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, wait, I think it's number 12, maybe? Slide 12?
Okay.
So this is what we were presented with, budget by function. But things have changed because it proposed, well, the deans have been eliminated, 2 more paraprofessionals have been added. So those budget numbers should be different now.
So when you, for example, let me go back to, so keep in mind, we removed all of those positions, which got the budget down to a zero balance where we were in the red, 584,000. And yeah, so once removing these, we got down to zero balance. However, if you notice under the add column under options, most of these positions are being funded with those CARES funds and not the FY23 general budget that we looked at, because we had to get that budget down to zero. And I'm sorry, Ms. Jacoby has her hand raised.
And so Ms. Keenan, that information is in this. It's, if you go down the next slide, please, Ms. Antone, to that. That is the budget by function for fiscal year 2023. It just, you're not getting the lines like they had before. But if you go back up to the top of the presentation, please, Ms. Antone.
Okay. Oh, from the last presentation.
Yeah, from the allocation. There, stop for a second. So if you go up one. So this budget by function is what is currently in the building, right? This is the fiscal year 2022 that you're operating off. And the next slide down and there's an error in it. It's actually fiscal year 2022. If there were no changes, that would be, but now that they've had the changes, there is a difference in that pie chart. If you go all the way down to the bottom, please, Miss Antone.
Right, so this is, this
Yeah,
is,
you'll see.
But the pie chart's not a budget. What we need, if you go up a slide, we need another column. So TE, we need budget based on current staffing and proposed budget based on changes that have been recommended. So I guess it doesn't seem like we're voting on a budget if we're voting on a pie chart. If we're not seeing the numbers broken out like this.
Ms. Keenan, are you wanting to see a line item budget? That's what I'm thinking you are referring to.
I would definitely like to see that, but if that's not available, I'd at least like to see this breakout.
just a second. This is.
I think also it's not a standard practice to show teachers by name in this process.
Oh,
So-
no.
And I know that
different
has
by
happened
name.
before, because I think you mentioned that you saw it before, but that's not a standard practice. But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. No, it
Um,
wasn't by name, Mr. Brown. It was just like ELA teacher, you know,
Okay.
10.
Ms.
Math
Anton,
teacher.
you could. So I think for the team to show that it's actually been put into the budget. Ms. Anton, the summary page, which is something that would not be in the presentation, but it shows every position, that page where we pulled all this information from.
Okay.
So if you wanted to share that page, and it shows how it's broken down into how you got the 47 teachers, by the ELA, the gifted, all of those teachers is shown on there, that number.
Okay, all right. What I'm gonna do is stop sharing and then I'll share again so I can show that screen in just a second.
You know which one, the summary one? Okay.
Wait. Okay, here we go. Let's see. There. All right. Okay, so just let me know.
This is exactly, yep. This is exactly what I remember from last year.
So this is the summary screen. And as you can see, if you look up top left, you'll see where projected enrollment 1118, total budget, and then you see unallocated balance. So the last time we looked at this was in the red, zero was in the red at 584,000. So one thing I do want to bring out, I think we have done a great job with, if you notice the pie from the first presentation and the pie today, you still have 84% dedicated to instruction. That's your teaching staff. So we were able to really tried our best not to have to touch as many teachers as possible, and it shows in this pie. So I think.
Santon, I think making sure we mention that this is based off a projection of 71 students less. So we have lost 71 students this year, which is equate to about 2 teachers, to be honest.
But we're only removing one position, teaching position. All right.
Well, wouldn't it technically be 2 because you have one person that's not returning and you're removing the math connections?
Yeah, so that one that have ESOL have Spanish, we had to remove that because we earned the 2 ESOL. Yeah. Okay.
So you said you had one that was not returning. Is that the ESOL?
Yeah. Oh, you're talking about in
You can't talk about a person.
Okay. Right, we can.
No. I wasn't saying the person. I was just saying the position.
Yeah, so one of the positions was ESOL 0.5. Another position was a Spanish 0.5. And so for this year, we added, instead of to qualify for 2 ESOL. And so we were going to hire an hourly Spanish teacher, but you cannot find an hourly Spanish teacher just for 8th grade. And we knew that also that there was a big number of students that were interested in Spanish. And so we traded the funds for one teacher to make it for one Spanish teacher. So we can offer Spanish to all kids that were interested in it. So it was a trade-off.
But didn't you also say we're having to hire an additional ESOL teacher because we
Yes.
earned 2?
We earned 2, yes. And so the 2 came off. So by giving up the half of Spanish, and that other half went to the ESL, that half goes back to the ESL department, but we were left with the 0.5, which was about $40-some thousand. And we added more. So the trade-off was to get a full-time Spanish teacher instead of an hourly Spanish teacher.
Okay, so this, I think this is the summary that we were looking at. And as you can see here, we have 10 math 6 through 8 teachers. Science teachers, we have 8, social studies 9, and ELA teachers, we have 12. And one of the things that it can be a little confusing, just not knowing, so let me just explain. We do have a large population of gifted students. So some of our teachers that are on our teaching teams, they are listed here as gifted teachers. So you won't see it in this number under the content areas, just so you won't be confused.
It's actually 10.
What's that?
It's 10. It's down there.
Right. They're 10 gifted teachers. We also have 1 art teacher, 1 band teacher, 1 music, 1 orchestra, 3 PE teachers, performing arts, we have 1, and then you have that world language teacher, that's 4, because we added that Spanish. And then here we have the gifted teachers, and those are going to be your, ELA, math, science, social studies teachers that are on a team. Then we go down here, we have 1 CTE 6 through 8 teacher. And that is going to be, let's see, what else we have down here. We have
JRTC.
Yeah, JLC, a junior leadership course there. We have 2 now ESOL teachers that we earned. In terms of interrelated, we have 10. Those are going to be our special ed teachers. We have 1 special ed lead teacher. We also have, where am I now?
I think also making a point of that whatever's in gray, we could not touch. Those are things that the district says you have to have this mandated. So you could not change those.
Right. And then, right. Yes. Also the special ed autism, we have 1 there. Special ed visual impairment, we have 1. Going down here, we have 8. Here we go. With the 8 special ed paraprofessionals, we've got the, let's see here, 2 that has assistant principals. We have 1 business manager, 1 school secretary, and we also have the 1 registrar. We've got, for counselors, right now it has 2. For media specialists, we have 1. We also have 1 school nurse. We also have 1 social worker. Let's see what else is here. We've got 3, where's that? 3 custodians, 1 psychologist. We actually have 1 resource officer, but our safety and security office, they actually allow us to have 1 additional resource officer that they staff for us, who can be pulled to help service other schools. So we will still have those 2 SROs on site next year. We do have 1 site manager, that's our school engineer building manager. We have 1 instructional technology specialist, 1 interim principal. We do have 1 interim assistant principal. Yeah. And that is where we are here.
And then the other ones are part of the CARES fund, but that fund has not been released to us, but those are the other positions. And one of the things that we made clear, we were trying to give kids a lot of opportunities or connections. we actually have quite a few connections compared to the amount of kids that we have. I think our largest group is 409, and we're having about 15 different connection classes. So those classes will remain rather small because a band could go up to like 42 students and PE.
So this is really helpful, and I would like to encourage for next year that this document be shared, that the summary be shared with Go teams, and ideally, a day before the meeting or something, or maybe have a Go team work session, because this is so much information to go through and digest, when seeing it for the first time. So I just want to make sure I'm really clear. So this document shows all of the positions that are being funded by our allocation.
Yes.
Then we have additional positions that are not on this document that are going to be funded with the CARES money.
Yes.
And is the CARES money guaranteed?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
So Mr. Kobe, going forward, what is the correct process for sharing information for the budget prior to the meeting? We had a discussion about it and we was not sure about what that process is. So we just want to make sure it's clear for everyone to know.
So the process is that initial allocation is somewhat of an information item, right? That's not a discussion item. So there's no point for the principal to send out that allocation beforehand, because that's the first time you guys are seeing like how the funds are coming in. In terms of this, I like to call this like the distribution of the allocation, right? This feedback meeting. Once the principal has filled out the budget presentation that came from our office, those PowerPoint slides, the principal can send that out in a reasonable time to the Go team members so that they can digest it and be ready for questions. What we try to avoid is putting it out so far in advance that then all of these questions arise in emails and phone calls and everything, because our Go teams are supposed to be having those discussions in the Go team meeting, not outside of that meeting. So there's that balance between how far in advance to send the reports, or not just around budget, but for any presentation, any report, anything like that, because we want to ensure that discussions happen in the Go team meeting and not through email, phone calls, or personal conversations. Does that help a little bit, Mr. Abernathy?
Yes, I totally agree with what you're saying. But again, this is a lot of information to digest, and getting this right before the actual meeting, there's no way that most people can digest exactly what's going on.
I understand that. I also, if I recall correctly, I believe Miss Antone was under the weather recently, which may have delayed some of this information because I think she was sick last week, if I recall.
I will say that we were working on the budget today and yesterday. Yeah, I mean, I agree. So that's a lesson learned, and we can move forward with that.
And I also will say that there are a lot of moving parts to these budgets, and what starts out in January, allocation, I know allocations have changed 2 or 3 times since January. So if the problem then becomes if if every other day principals are getting an update from finance, hey, we just heard from the Department of Education at the state level that the CARES funding is going to be this, or we just heard that finance decided to fund signature programs a little differently, so now our allocation looks like this, or it's a constantly moving thing. So to send out a presentation when you know that the ground is completely shifting under it all the time, that also leads to problems. So that's why we encourage our teams to make sure that the feedback meeting, 2 things about it. 1, give yourselves plenty of time to have these discussions and digest it. The other thing is that if you feel you need more time to digest this, then schedule then try to find time to schedule another meeting. There's nothing preventing you from doing that to ensure that your team has that full, robust discussion that you feel is necessary. In terms of having that line by line and all of that information, we know that 90% of the budgets, and this isn't just for DT Howard, and this isn't just for APS, this is schools in general across the country. 85 to 90% of a school's budget or more is set to people, right? So by putting how many teachers you have in each grade covers almost probably close to 90% of the budget anyway. And Ms. Antone laid out how she's addressing the priorities, because there are things that aren't in your priorities, but you know you need to run the building. You need custodians, you need a principal. Those aren't going to be part of your priorities, but knowing those key positions that are addressing your priorities is what's really important. Not necessarily, yes, you want to know how many teachers are in the building, but it may not be outlined as part of addressing your priority to handle the core function of the school. Does that help frame that a little better for y'all?
Yes, ma'am.
But I disagree. I mean, you know, we can't comment on a budget without seeing the budget. And, you know, the summary that Ms. Antone provided was very helpful. And, you know, for example, let's say that we're required to have 2 maintenance custodians at the school. And we see on the budget that we have 8. Well, then we could question that and say, well, wait, do we need 8 custodians? Why do we have 8? But without having that information, we can't address that. And, you know, we've identified some potential other priorities or goals, for example, trying to add another 8th grade teacher. Well, we can't comment on how to achieve that without seeing all of those other things. So
I think that another thing, and I'm agreeing with you, Ms. Keena, I think previously before in the budget process, there was, and I think when we went to autonomy, it kind of changed. There was a list, like it would say for every school based off your enrollment, there were certain positions you had to have in place. And so that was a part of that conversation with the GO team. But we would definitely take your concern and like look at how can we approve it for next year. And so there, I will say to the GO team, there are some of the positions that are on here. We are hoping that the new principal of Howard will be a part of that process because they won't officially start until July. But hopefully if we name someone that they can be a part of the process of hiring.
And I have another question. I apologize, I have so many questions.
I have a question too, so I just put me on the list.
Okay, so this is, I will be quiet after this, Audrey. It was my understanding from the last meeting that the allocation, well, like what you said, Ms. Jacoby, the allocation is kind of evolving, and with the tax digest coming in, it's possible that our allocation will go up.
Yes.
Okay.
Because sometimes there have been times where we've gotten more money like in May, and we had to come back with the GO team and say, hey, we got this money now, we can bring these positions back. That has happened several times. Remember, the budget is not approved until in June sometime.
And it, unfortunately, it has also happened in the opposite direction.
Yeah, you lost money. Yes.
In 2020, and I remember this in 2020, is that the legislature had been poised to fully fund QBE, but then because of the pandemic, they pulled back drastically. So in May of 2020, we had to bring our GO teams back to talk about the drastic cuts that were made, which is why we try to hedge some of that with the title holdbacks, with the holdback funds for both Title I and just the general holdback, the leveling holdback, so that we don't have to bring you all back. So we're crossing our fingers that if we do bring you back, it's for the positive side. But again, there are so many parts that go into where the money the district has to spend come from that
there's also a safety net in place for next school year. So if we don't make our enrollment, there's some funds in reserve so that we don't have to cut. So there's a safety net in the budget as well for when school starts. If we don't make our enrollment, but if we do make our enrollment, there's additional funding that will come back. Or if we make more than our enrollment, there's additional funds will come back to the school.
And I think Ms. Reese had a question.
Yeah, my question is with the removal of some of the roles, especially like the dean and stuff like that, the 3 deans, how will those functions be done?
Good question.
Especially, yeah.
Yeah.
Who's gonna do that?
What the function of the deans right now, and that was a new position that was created. I think this is year 2. They were handling student discipline and also 504s. And so typically in most schools, your assistant principals handle discipline. That's one of their primary roles. And in terms of 504s, the restorative practice / MTSS 504 person would do the role of the 504s.
So now the assistant principals will absorb that work?
Yes, they will observe the work of student discipline, which is pretty much what normally happens in all of schools. Actually, our dean of students was a unique role to Howard, and it was something that was tried in terms of having a dean per grade to kind of free up time for assistant principals to be able to do more of that coaching and instructional work in the classrooms, which is the work that the instructional coaches would have as a primary role.
Okay.
But typically in all schools, for the most part, that is one of the primary roles of an assistant principal.
Okay. Okay, so you don't foresee that there would be any sort of, I guess, diminishment or deterioration in the student services and attention that they're getting. It's just kind of shifting around and you're adding the instructional coaches to make sure everything's covered? Okay.
With the role of the instructional coaches, because that is their only focus, that the teachers will actually have more, like a tons more support in terms of building teacher capacity.
Okay.
And we considered, as we considered the instructional coaches, one was that we started 2 new curriculums, one in math and one in ELA within the district. The other is that the math standards are changing for the state next year. And so we want to make sure that we focus on teacher professional development and teacher support, and also increasing student engagement in the classroom.
All right, are there any more questions?
Well, I do have a question. So I think at one point in this process, it may have been said that Howard was admin heavy or top heavy. And I think there was some, at least alluding to being compared to other schools and like what's typical. So with the removal and adding and kind of shifting around in these positions, how does Howard look now in terms of what would be expected and what's typical and what's really most effective for a school like ours?
So most schools in Atlanta have a principal, assistant principal, typically in middle school. All the middle schools have assistant principal at every grade level. They most of them have a counselor at every grade level. And then the business manager was a position that was brought on under our previous administration. And most schools have, actually all the schools have a business manager except for one. So it's very typical. I mean, at my previous school, I had a part-time business manager, but it was because we were trying to get funds back closer to the classroom. And there used to be a document that the district had that outlined what should be staffed at a high school based off of student population. So as we look forward to next year, I'll make sure we mention that and see if we can bring something similar to that back.
Mr. Brown, do some schools have a bookkeeper rather than a business manager?
Quite a few schools have bookkeeper and business manager. Now, at my previous school, we just had the I had my principal secretary, and we had a part-time business manager. But that's a new role that was outlined under our previous administration. And so most schools right now, I know like Morningside Elementary School, they have a business manager. And I know their population is not as large as Howard is, but most schools do have a business manager in place now. Now, some of them may be cutting it because of, but I don't know what's in each budget, but traditionally they do.
Yeah, for our cluster, I know Midtown does not. I haven't done this. I don't know about the others.
Yeah, I know Morningside has one. I know Jackson High School has one. Quite a few of the elementary schools and other clusters have one. That is something that was a new position that was brought on. And that may be something that the new principal will look at exploring next year if there's a need.
I have one more question. I think it's my last one. So in a lot of our conversations, or just what sticks in my mind, you hear a lot about gifted students, gifted resources, all these options and access for advanced classes. But how does this budget reflect support for you? We talked about the struggling student a little bit. I mean, is the struggling student the same as the student on a 504 plan, or just how is that population being serviced? We had talked a lot about closing gaps and that sort of thing. So if you could just talk about that just real quick, just to elevate it in my mind, that would be good.
Yeah, so when we talk about a restorative practice / MTSS / 504, when you're talking about MTSS, that's multi-tiered systems of supports. And that is where we're talking about students who are on a tier 2 or tier 3 plan based on deficiencies in ELA and math. And so you have that person to support that, but your instructional coaches will also be there to support that tier 1 instruction in the classroom, who also helps to not only make sure that your struggling students are getting that support, but also your high achieving students. So your instructional coaches you're not there just for struggling students. They're there to make sure that your tier 1 instruction, that core instruction that you see in that classroom, is supporting all students.
Okay, so that you have the instructional coaches, and I guess the teachers have differentiated instruction as well. And then you have the one person who's I guess spearheading all that, or kind of over the.
So when you ask about how the struggling students being supported, your MTSS person would be leading that process. And you normally also have an administrator over the MTSS process, but they make sure that every student, if the student is struggling and they have a deficiency in ELA and math, they make sure that they do have those intervention plans in place. They have to meet on those plans monthly, and they also have to see to it that data is being entered into our data system so that students are their progress is being monitored frequently. So that restorative practice person / MTSS / 504 will be overseeing that process, but normally you do have an administrator who's also over that entire process.
Okay.
And we'll also still have our reading connections class, right, to help the at-risk readers.
Right.
Yep.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Sounds like a lot is going to be riding on these instructional coaches. They better jump in and get it.
Yes.
All right, any additional questions? All right, on the screen, we still have questions for us to consider. I read the first one, the second one How our district and cluster priorities reflected in our budget. Cluster priorities with staff, materials, etc., are dedicated to support our cluster's priorities. Signature programs with staff, materials, etc., are dedicated to supporting our signature program. Other positions our school will share with another school, i.e. nurse, counselor, which doesn't apply.
All right.
So are we just looking at those things to consider? Are we actually answering these things?
I can just share with you, Coach Abernathy, with the team, in terms
Okay.
of cluster priorities, what staff materials are dedicated to supporting our cluster priorities. You know, one of the biggest things right now is our signature program that our cluster will be deciding upon. And so that big thing for us this year is making sure that we do have that signature program specialist. And there have also been funds allocated to the signature program period. So we can make sure that there's funds for any travel, for professional development, trainings, materials that may be needed to purchase for the program that's brought on by the cluster. Also signature programs, what staff materials, we talk about that. And we are not, in terms of sharing a position with another, we're not sharing a nurse or any counselors or any positions right now with any other schools.
All right, if there are no other questions, we can move on to the principal's report.
All right, I will move on. So just really quick, in terms of safety protocol update, I do want to say that our safety team met last week. It went well, and just, you know, as an update, we have improved arrival times to around 9:15 to 9:17 each day, where we're able to go ahead and get our students moving to their first class. We also definitely see that our students are using the See Something, Say Something platform, and we're able to address those pretty quickly to make sure that all of those issues are being addressed. So we definitely are glad that our training and orientation with our students and staff is paying off there, because our kids are definitely using that. In terms of the universal screener, our BAS 3 best universal screener with our behavioral and mental health screening, that will take place on the 23rd. And so the opt-out letter has gone out to parents. We'll send it out again as well to make sure that if there are any parents who do not want their students to participate, that they will not. And our counselors, after we have that screening, will again go through and analyze that data and make sure that all of those students who score in that high intense category, that they're meeting with each of those individual students to do some further screening and reaching out to all of those parents and also our social worker to make sure that all of the necessary supports are in place. Also, our Rising Rams tour / visit will be on February 28th, where we will host an AM tour and then a PM tour. And also we have a career day schedule for March 2nd. I do believe that should be that Wednesday during advisory period. And our counselors have been getting ready for that day. And that week will be pretty much like a spirit week. So do look for information to come. And then we also have our Go Team elections that are going on now up until the end of February. And we currently have 2 parent seats, 1 instructional staff seat, and a community member seat.
Miss Antone, if I may, every school has 2 staff and 2 parent guardian seats up for election. Every school will have a vacant community seat, but that seat is filled through nomination by the principal and approval by the other Go Team members at the first meeting of the 2022 school year. Okay. So yeah, I just want to make sure everybody knows that there are 2 parent, 2 staff.
Okay.
So.
Okay, and then, so we just fill one of the instructional staff seats, so we'll do that again for this next year, correct?
So terms are attached to seats, not people. Think like your other elected officials. So, you know, if if something happened to the governor, the lieutenant governor would step up and would only fill out the rest of the term, not get a full 4 years. So the same thing happens with our seats. We have, and at the end of January, beginning of February, we sent an email to all Go team members to let them know when their term was and whether or not they were eligible based upon term limits, because our Go team members can only serve for 2 consecutive terms. If you are unable to serve in the seat at Howard again, either because you will no longer be eligible or because you are term limited, I would ask that you all really try to help Miss Antone find your replacement. I cannot stress enough how far a personal invitation goes to somebody. And, you know, think about those parents or colleagues that you have that maybe don't always say a lot, but when they do, it is very thoughtful. It takes into account all of the students and is really trying to lift the work of the school. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Kobe. And that is all I have. Coach Abernathy, back to you.
Oh,
Miss-
thank you. Oh, go ahead, Ms. Skinny.
Thank you. There was a question about the 8th grade graduation. Is the date set by APS? Are all 8th grade graduations on the same day, or
So yeah, we have the promotion ceremonies, and that is something that our 8th grade leadership team is working with some of our 8th grade parents and our parent liaison to actually go through that process and make sure we have a solid plan. So it isn't something that's set by APS. It's something that each school actually does on their own.
And one last comment question. There's been a lot of trash on the field. A lot of trash. And is there a process, or can we explore a process for, I think, getting that cleaned up more regularly, but also more trash cans? You know, I think there can be some trash cans kind of up by the faculty parking lot. So they're not on the field. They wouldn't be, you know, interfering with the kids. I mean, I think Coach would, you know, be instrumental in helping figure out maybe where we could put a few more trash cans where it wouldn't interfere with any of the athletics. But yeah, I'm hoping there can be a plan to address the trash on the field.
Gotcha. Thank you, Ms. Keenan. Can definitely do that.
All right, any other questions or comments? Or move
The
on
only
to-
thing is,
Oh, go
before
ahead,
you
go ahead, Mr.
leave,
Brown.
the
Go
Go
ahead, Mr.
team,
Brown.
I'm sorry. Just remind the Go team to look out for invitations from Dr. Patterson as we get ready for interviews for Howard in the next couple of weeks.
All right, we're now at
Also,
announcement.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
Also,
go ahead, Ms.
please
Kobe.
remember to complete your budget training and any other trainings you have in Ellis. If you have any questions, you can email our office.
I just finished the budget training and passed. I have my certificate. So I'm glad I finished that. Yeah.
Thanks, Doc. All right, so for announcements, I will announce our next Go Team meeting is March the 15th at 4:45. Do we have any other announcements?
That is all I have, Coach Abernathy.
All right, to my knowledge, we do not have anyone signed up for public comment.
No.
So can I get a motion to adjourn?
Hello, this is Audrey Reese. I'll move to adjourn the meeting.
I second.
All right, Ms. Reese,
Dr.
motion,
Bryant.
Dr. Bryant, second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? You all have a great and wonderful evening.